Perfect.
Good evening. Very, very special week that we're entering now. That, first of all, it's Parsha Shlach. Yesterday we learned the pasuk in Chitas. Va'ata Yigdal no keach Adnai. That's the mimer that we're learning. Gewaltige schus that we are able to learn this, and the whole schus is le Eloi Nishmas, le schus Miriam Bas Ephraim Za'ev should have Yididus and Hashem Alamata B'Kaviv Mamash, and as usual, it's kedai to start up to give tzedakah, to put money in a pushka. So we have a very special week that we're entering. The mimer we're learning came from a Kovetz Chof Sivan. Next Tuesday is Chof Ches. So we have a very good opportunity, a special opportunity to start to learn the mimer. And today, I hope, as is Hashem, that we'll make a siyum on this mimer. So we'll be able to start the next one in Yitzhak Hashem. I do want to say that even though there is only about one page left, one daf, but I just want you to know that nevertheless, we can speak 2-3 hours on just the last page, because I can call it like the dessert of the Maimed, is what we're going to learn today. It's also the Sachakol of the Maimer and answering the questions of the beginning of the Maimer. So let's go right to the learning. So we started off, the Rebbe is explaining the pasuk, Va'ata Yigdal no keach Adnai. That Moshe Rabbeinu in this week's parsha is saying to HaKadosh Baruch Hu that there should be a Hagdala in Adnai. What does it mean, a Hagdala in Adnai? That Adnai, what is Adnai? Atzfiras HaMalchus. And Moshe Rabbeinu is asking, we need a takana, we need a slicha, a kapara for the Chet HaMeraglim. How can that be accomplished? So we need to bring from a higher level. We need to bring from a place where the pegam did not affect. And where was that? That's in the level of Chachma. So all the Maaseh mitzvahs and the thing that the Meraglim opposed was all in Sfiras HaMalchus. And the Sheidish of Sfiras HaMalchus, which is the Sheidish of Seder Shtalshlus, that's Chachma. And that's what Moshe is asking. Ba'ata Yigdal no keach Adnai. What should happen? We should bring down an oil from very high. Where to? To Malchus, to Adnai. How do you bring that light? And for that we have two pirushim, two approaches. One is the way it's brought in a lot of Maimarim, L'Kutei Torah and others. We learned this earlier, that Koyach should come to Adnai. Koyach is the Sheidish. It's higher than Adnai. It's not on that same level where the Pigam was. So bring down an oil from Koyach into Adnai. From Chachma to Malchus. So you're reaching into a place which is higher than where the Chet caused the Pigam. And where is it coming down? Into Adnai. Where the Pigam was, to be Mamshech Hayr, a taste for Seir, Hagdala. That's one pshat. The second pshat was, like the simple meaning of the pasuk, Ba'ata Yigdal na, what should become big? Koyach Adnai. We want to cause a Hagdala in Adnai, in Koyach Adnai. That means koyach itself should get a hagdala. How does koyach get a hagdala? You have to reach from even higher. Why so? Because koyach adnai is the shadish of ishtalshlus. Even though a shadish is higher, but nevertheless, a shadish still has a shaykhis to ishtalshlus. So there still is a medida v'hagvala. And therefore, since the Hagdala was the Chet was in Adnai, and this is the Shodish of Adnai, so it's not high enough. It's not high enough of a level. We could get a bigger slicha, even a greater slicha, if we get a Hagdala that comes from Lamaila Meseder Ishtalshalis. What is that? Yud Gimel Midas Harachmim, which is higher Seder Ishtalshalis, which always brings a Slicha and Kapara. Since we're talking about reaching into such a high level, where is that going to come down? Into Koyach Adnai. What's Koyach Adnai? Koyach is the level of Chachma, like we saw in the chart. Look in the first column on the right. The first pirush is that the Shadish HaSlicha is through a Hagdala that comes from Koyach, brings a Hagdala into Adnai. Through what? Through a Hamshacha from Koyach. So it's still above Adnai, and therefore it can bring a Slicha. But then there's the second pirush. The Hagdala is in Koyach Adnai. Hagdala is in Koyach, which comes from higher, from L'mayla Miseder Ishtalshalos, Yud Gimel Midas Harachmim. These three levels that we're talking about now, so we are all in this inyan that we're learning. Moshe Rabbeinu is asking Kadosh Baruch Hu to give us a slicha v'kapara. Like it says, kapano la'am, kapano la'am hazeh. He's asking Hashem to give a kapara. That's the whole purpose of his bakasha. Where should it come from? From Seviv Kololmin. And that's why, like Rashi says, what's Moshe's bakasha? Va'ata Yigdal lokoyach adnai kasher dibarta, like you have spoken. What has Hashem spoken? We learned it in Rashi yesterday. Kadosh Baruch Hu was writing, Ke Hashem erech hapayim. Moshe Rabbeinu said, "You're writing this for the tzaddikim?" Hashem said, "No, it's also for the Rishaim." He says, "Let the Rishaim perish." Hashem says, "Chayecha, I promise you that one day you're going to need this for the Rishaim." And that's why now, when it came to Chet HaMeraglim, Moshe Rabbeinu said to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, "Please forgive them." Hashem said, "But you said it's only for tzaddikim." He says, "Yes, Hashem, but you said it's also for Rishaim." And that's why Moshe Rabbeinu is asking the Yud Gimel Midas Harachmim should bring a slicha and kapara from L'mayla Miseder Ishtalshalos L'gamri, from Seviv, come down into Chachma, Koyach, which is Chachma, which is Makel Seder Ishtalshalos. Seder Ishtalshalos is Memale, and that will bring down from there into Adnai to Malchus, and that brings Havdalah and Milia Pagam. It fills up that blemish. To understand it better, the Rebbe brought a mashal to Nefesh HaAdam, that a person, Nefesh HaAdam, let's move on to the next part of the next column. Nefesh HaAdam, a person has Ratzain, which is higher than his Seder Ishtalshalos, because the Keiches start from Chachma and Lamata. So what is higher than this Keiches? Ratzain. What comes under that? The Shadish of his Ishtalshalos. The Shadish, what is that? Kadmas HaSeichel. Chachma in its highest level It could be a level which is not even revealed yet. It's seichel hanelam b'katmas haseichel. But it's still seichel. It's still ishtalshlus of the person. How is a person ma'orev his kadmas haseichel? Through dibur. Why dibur? Dibur is like malchus. Like it says in Pasach Eliyahu, malchus peh. So dibur is malchus. When you speak, the shayrish of dibur is from where? Not from ratzain, but still from higher. It comes from kadmas haseichel. Higher than chachma hagluya. Yes, even though you might think, what is dibur? Dibur is, at the end of the day, what's dibur? It's just a lavush in which you put your seichel. It's a garment through which you express your seichel that you have in your mind. Nevertheless, as Alter Rebbe explains it elaborately in the Geras HaKodesh and what the Rebbe is saying here in the Maimer, dibur has its own source. It's not coming from the seichel. It's coming from kadmus haseichel, a much higher level. And that's why, as the Rebbe explains, once you start speaking and you're saying your divrei Torah, new revelations of light come down into your seichel hagalui, into chachma hagalui. It comes down into your understanding. Your understanding you much more because you brought it out in dibur. So this is a dogma for the first pirush, that we want a hamshacha of koyach into adnai. We're not talking about higher, we're talking about koyach to come down to adnai. How? Through being ma'orev from adnai, bringing down a gilui of koyach, and that's what Moshe's bakasha is, to bring it down. How's it brought down? We're going to learn later in the Maimer. The Rebbe is going to tell us what we have to do that. But pshat is, koyach should come down to adnai. Just like kadmus haseichel should give a revelation of oir into the seichel hagalui. Seichel hanelem starts shining a new light into seichel hagalui, and that's why we get a hisafin understanding. And also, it takes away all of our kashas and all of our contradictions that we have when we were learning. We didn't understand it well. You bring it down to dibur, everything gets cleared up because it's reaching into kadmus haseichel. That's a dogma for the first pirush, that koyach should come down to adnan. What's the second pirush? That we want to make Havdalah in koyach. So you have to get even from higher. And a dogma benefesh is ratzain. Ratzain is the highest koyach. It's a king. It's a ruler. It controls all the koyachs. And that's why it says, that's where a person can accomplish much more learning. Because we have the ratzain, we have the desire, it's Moshel v'shoylet al kol ha'koyches. And that's where we're up to on page 86. And now we're going to continue, and then we're going to see it in the chart, Bezos Hashem. When we're saying Ratzin is much higher than all of his kaiches, that means it's higher than the ishtalshelus of the person. The person say that ishtalshelus is what? A person say the ishtalshelus is from seichel and midas. What's above that? What's like Seviv Kalaman of the person? That's Ratzin. So that's a dogma to the inyan of bringing Yigdal na koyach hadnai. That koyach hadnai should have a Havdalah. The koyach itself should get Havdalah from yet a higher level, higher than Seder Shtalshlus. And Nefesh HaAdam, it's like Ratzin coming down into Seichel And that is a Gilui Art. This is what the Rebbe is saying here. And that's why Gam al Koyach HaSeichel, K'may Merazal, Lo Elam Yil Midodam, B'makim Shli B'chafetz. The Al Yedei Sharoitze B'zeh, because by a person wanting to learn this, who Maven B'Ifenachet, he understands it gar anders. He understands it much better. Mekiven Sharatzin Ulam Maila, Gami Shoyrish HaSeichel, Kadmas HaSeichel. And since Ratzin is so high, it's even higher than Kadmus HaSeichel, like we saw in the chart before. It's higher. It's like the Sevid Kalalman. Lamaylam Ishtalshalas, say the Ishtalshalas of a person. Kines Kaleel, Lachain, Hapa'ul Lashnas is Beseichel. Aidea Ratzin, Bogam B'Shedish HaSeichel. Through Ratzin, not only it causes a Pa'ula in Seichel, but even in Kadmas HaSeichel, in the Shadish of Seichel. And that's why it brings you so much more Gili Ayin HaSeichel, because it's causing a Gili Ayin to come from higher than say the Shtalshalas of the person. It comes down into the Shadish HaSeichel. By Dibur, it brings down from Kadmas HaSeichel, which is the Shadish of Seichel, it brings it down lower. By Ratzain, it's even higher than that. It brings a Safa just like when we're saying bring a Safa in Koyach Adnai, the same thing, Ratzain is Goyim, a Safa, not just in the level of Adnai, that means in the Seichel HaGolui, but even in Kadmas HaSeichel, in such a high level. V'lachein ha'hisafa v'seichel sha'idei ratzain. That's why the hisaf that a person gets through ratzain, he harbe yoser me ha'hisafa sha'idei dibur. That's why it's much higher than the hisaf that you get only through dibur. Ki ha'hisafa sha'idei dibur. The Isafa that you get through Dibur is only bringing your Ma'ira, Shedish HaSeichel, into Seichel HaGoli, into a lower level. Mekiva Shegam Shedish HaSeichel, Metzius V'yesh Beitziur, and since Shedish HaSeichel already has its Tziyur, in that way, in such a level, therefore the seichel is limited to a certain level. Then the Rebbe went on. I just want to go through quickly and come to the part that we're up to on page 87. Then the Rebbe says everything has to come through Kayach HaAdam, Avodas HaAdam. And that's what the Rebbe explained. Avoda l'mayla mitam v'das should come down into tam v'das, which that is like we saw. I put in the chart later. Then that l'mayla mitam v'das is like you're serving Hashem from higher than your ishtalshalos, from ratzim, from a very high level. L'mayla mitam v'das, and that comes down into the avodah shal pi tam v'das. That is what's accomplished in Avodas HaAdam. Now let's continue from where we left off last week. Page 87. What does it mean? Avodah l'mayla mitam v'das. The Rebbe says Avodah l'mayla mitam v'das. If you take a look in Tanya, Perek Chafei, it says it there. In one of the letters that the Rebbe got from his father before the Chasana, the Rebbe writes there that he should learn on the day of the Chasana, Perek Chafei of Tanya. What does it say over there? Over there it talks about the Milchama that a person has to do the right thing, to do the Ratzon Hashem, to accomplish what he has to. But sometimes it takes a lot of effort. and it means giving up certain tithas. Alter Rebbe says there, listen, won't you be ready to give up your life al Kiddush Hashem? Every Yid will be ready for that. There isn't a Yid who's not ready to give up his life on Kiddush Hashem. So Yisurei Maves, the suffering and the pain of death, is at a certain level. It's a very big pain. That everyone is ready to do for Hashem. So to give up a taiva, is that harder than Yisurei Maves? And Yisurei Maves we will do with Ava. We'll do it out of love to Hashem. Go on Kiddush Hashem. So anything less than the Yisurei Maves, we should be surely ready to give it up. Even if it's hard to control ourselves, either in Sur Meira or Asay Taiv, to step away from something we shouldn't be doing, or to do something we got to do, and it's hard. That the fulfillment of Torah mitzvahs depends on this. A person constantly remember his readiness for Mesiras Nefesh for Hashem. Through remembering that a Yid is always ready for Mesiras Nefesh, which is L'mayla Mishtalshel Sheba Adam, then what happens? Nasas Hagdala V'Hisafa became a Torah mitzvahs. It brings a Hagdala and a Safa in actual Torah mitzvahs, Poel Mamish, which is Hishtalshel Sheba Adam. That means he's drawing from L'mayla Mishtalshel Sheba Adam. Where's Mesiras Nefesh? Mesiras Nefesh is beyond Seichel, L'mayla Mitam V'Das. Doesn't make sense a human being should give away his life. For what? For Hashem. That only comes from L'mayla, from his Seder Ishtalshelus. It comes from the level L'mayla Mitam V'Das. That's his Mesiras Nefesh. That's L'mayla Mishtalshelus by a person. So, if we want to accomplish Ba'ato Yigdal no Koyach Hatna, to bring a Gili Oyer, according to the second pshat, to bring it down from Yud Gimel Midas Harachmim, bring down from L'mayla Miseder Ishtalshelus, we want to bring down Hagdala in Koyach and then into Adnai. There's only one way. Avodas Ha'adam. And where? The readiness from Mesiras Nefesh. That the L'mayla Mitam V'Das penetrates into his Tam V'Das. Tam V'Das is Ishtalshelus. L'mayla Mitam V'Das, that's higher than Ishtalshelus. So that's what the Rebbe started in Perek Ches to tell us everything is totally in Avodas Ha'adam. This is Bechlalos. Bechlalos, that a person reaches into a higher level, it brings down a Hagdala. What do we need Hagdala for? To bring the Kapara and Slicha. But here the Rebbe is going to go more Bepratios and talk about the Pshat, the second Pirush, that one is suffering Koyach Adnai. Bepratios Yesi Yeshleimah. Shebechdei shetiyam shachas haseved have Hagdala bekoyach adnai. How is it accomplished? To cause a hamshacha of seved into the level of koyach adnai. Tzarich lekasher ha'avoda shalamayla mitam v'das mechinas kadmas haseichel. He has to bring that which is l'mayla mitam v'das into the level of tam v'das. Even though you're talking about Kadmas HaSeichel is already Seichel. It's already Tam V'Das. It's on a high level, but it's not L'mayla Mitam V'das. So we have to bring the L'mayla Mitam V'das into Tam V'das, into Kadmas HaSeichel. Which translating it into Ishtalshelus, to bring from Yud Gimel Midas Harachmim, which is higher than Ishtalshelus, into Ishtalshlus. Bring Yud Gimel Mitzrachmim to bring a Hagdalah into Ishtalshlus, which begins by Koyach and then it goes to Adnan. Now the Rebbe is going to explain very, very Geschmack in Indian, which will give us a new insight. We go to Shul and we say, Amen Yehei Shmei Rabba. You know, we say it, little kids say it, grown-ups say it. What does it mean, Amen Yehei Shmei Rabba? Really, it's a translation of Baruch Shem Kved Malchusei Leilam Vad. What do we say? Baruch Shem Kved Malchusei Leilam Vad. That Shem Kved Malchusei, the name of Kved Malchusei should be Baruch, should be benched Leilam Vad. What do we say by Yehei Shmei Rabba? You say Yehei Shmei Rabba, his holy name, his great name, should be Mavarach, like Baruch, Baruch Shem, when La'olam La'ol Me'al Maya. It's Mamish translation in Aramaic of Baruch Shem Kaved Malchus Leilam Vad. That's why it's so special. It's the Shevach that Malachim give HaKadosh Baruch Hu. What does it mean here? What is Shmei Rabba? Shmei Rabba means Shmoi HaGadol. Where is that? L'mayla Meseder HaShtalshlus. Shmoi HaGadol should come down here. L'mayla Meseder HaShtalshlus should be Nimshach Lamata. What we're asking for, Yigdal no Koyach Adnai, believe it or not, the Zohar says that's what Amen Yehei Shmei Rabba accomplishes. Yes, the Zohar puts them together. Ata Yidna Kol Nechatna and Amen Yehei Shmei Rabba is the Zal B'Zach. Where do we see it? What is Ata Yidna Kol Nechatna to bring something from L'mayla Mishtalshlus down? That's what Yehei Shmei Rabba accomplishes. Where do we see it? Let's look inside. Zeu Shomra Razal. And this is what the Razal say. If a person says Yesh Me Rabba with all of his koyach, that even if the person had a chait, had a sin, just like the Meraglim sinned, and Moshe wanted to bring a kapara, so how can we be goyim? There should be koyim like zadin, dina shalayin shana. How? Through saying Amen Yesh Me Rabba b'chol koychay. How does it accomplish it? The Rebbe brings there are two pirushim. When you say b'chol koychay yeshlam shnei pirushim. Just like we had two pirushim, and what is Yigdal no koyach adnai? We're having a parallel two pirushim on Yehei Shmei Rabba Mevarach. But what does b'chol koychay mean? Mamish parallel. Let's see what they are. Pirush Rashi. First, you have the first pirush. B'chol koyach kavanasa. That a person should say Amen Yesh Me Rabba with all the koyach of his kavanah. That means, like he's going to say later, Ra'usa Deliba. It's not just seichel. It's way above your seichel. A level of l'mayla of your ishtalshlus. B'chol koyach kavanasa. That's one pirush. Pirush Taisvis. The Taisvis says B'kerl Ram. Verbalize it. Say it. B'kerl Ram. Loud. And the Rebbe is going to say these are corresponding to the two pirushim in Yigdal no koyach adnai. Kol koyach kavanasai is a very high level, like bringing them from higher than ishtalshlus into koyach. And what is the second pshat? Toisvis, Kerl Ram. What's Kerl Ram? It's Dibur. Dibur reaches where to? Kadmas HaSeichel. It doesn't reach all the way up. You see that the two pshatim, the two pirushim that we have in Yigdal no koyach adnai, whether we're talking about kadmas haseichel to come down lamata, or you're talking about even higher than that, ratzain, are parallel to the two pirushim here. Rashi says kol keach kavanasai, and Tosfos says bekel ram. Those are the two levels. Yeshloim Rabbi Yerbazeh can explain the explanation to this. By saying with the whole koyach, what happens? Nasa hagdolas koyach adnai. It's causing a hagdala of both in koyach and in adnai. What does that mean? How do we get a hagdala in koyach? In the level of koyach, you have to reach higher than ishtalshlus. He's going to mitzanachna, right? The Yishmei Rabba Ushmei Agodel Seiv Shalamayla Mishtalshlus. When you say Shmei Rabba, you're referring to Yud Gimel Mitzrachim, the level of higher than Ishtalshlus. Seivev. Shal Yidei Shachas HaSeivev Nasa Agdolas Koyach Adnai. Now, this brings Agdola not only in Adnai, but in Koyach Adnai. It brings him in the level, it brings it to the higher level, to Koyach Adnai. That's why this can accomplish what does that mean? What does that have to do with the Gezar Din? What's a Gezar Din coming from? It's coming from a chet, from a sin, for which we need a slicha and kapara. What did we see in this week's parsha? How is that accomplished? Through Yigdal na Koyach Adnai, to bring Agdala into Koyach and then into Adnai. Gazar dinu mitzad hapigam b'shem Adnai. Any Gazar din that comes, chas v'shalom, is because there is Aveda. Where is the pigam happen? Like we're learning throughout the whole Maimer, only at the level of Malchus, Adnai. By Yidei Hagdolas Koyach Adnai nistaken apigam. Through the Hagdala of Koyach Adnai, this fixes that pigam. How is this accomplished? Through saying Amin Yesh Meiraba B'chol Koychai U'B'chdei Shetiyam Shacha, in order that there should be this Amshacha D'Shmei Rabba. We want to bring it down to Koyach Adnai. Until now, we were learning there are two pirushim, and one is independent of the other. It's not connected. One pirush Koyach Adnai is Koyach Shkamna to Adnai. The second pirush is that Koyach gets a Hagdala. How? From Lamaila, from Ishtalshlus. You can learn Pshat here also. You learn separate Rashi's Pshat. Chol Koyach Kavanasei. Have a lot of Kavana. Or Tosfos Pshat, but curled ram. You're not connecting the both. The Rebbe says, we're merging both Pirush and we're putting them both together. What does that mean? Because you need both. You need both things. You need both the Kol Kavana, Koyach Kavanasei. You need his whole Kavana. That's higher than his Ishtalshlus. You also need the Koyel. Why? Let's look inside. Chol Kavanasei, Ya Kavana Drusa Liba, Shalamayla Mitam Vadas. What does it mean? Rashi says, Kol Koyach means the whole Koyach Kavana, the whole Koyach Kavanasei. That's the Usa the Liba, Shalamayla Mitam Vadas. Lamayla Mishtalshlus Shabbat. That's the level which is higher than the ishtalshlus of a person. Level of ratzin, the rus of the liba, much higher than tam v'das. That's one thing you need, but that's not enough. Because what if I'm oyer from higher than ishtalshlus, and it doesn't come all the way down to adnai? I also need a gili oyer in adnai. What is ma'oyer that? The Karel Ram who had Dibur. That's the first Pirush that we learned. that dibur is ma'orer kadmas haseichel. That's Karl Ram verbalizing it. Hu adibur shema'orer b'chinas kadmas haseichel. Hasherish d'ishtalshelus. So you need both. You need the kavana to bring the oir from higher than your ishtalshelus into ishtalshelus, but it's only into your sherish of ishtalshelus. It's not all the way down yet. Then you need dibur, your malchus, to bring it down lower to the place where the begam was. Because it's not enough that I'll only bring an oir hagdala from higher than ishtalshelus. I'll bring it to kayach. Kayach didn't have the problem. Kayach wasn't sick. The begam wasn't there. The blemish was much lower in Adnai. That's why you need something to bring it down to Adnai, into a shtalshlus. So that's why you need both. You need, number one, Rusa de Liba. You need Kol Kayach Kavanasai. It's not Stam Kavana. Stam Kavana, you could say Seichel. Kol Kayach Kavanasai, says Rashi. That's Lamaila from Yerush Talshlus. And where do you bring it down to? To the Sherish of Yerush Talshlus. And from there, it comes all the way down to Adnai, to your Malchus, through Dibur. By Yidei Shekol Kavanasai, he loidak b'machshava, elabah b'kerl ram, that you call Kavanasai that you have higher than your Ishtalshlus. It doesn't only stop by machshava. It comes then also in Dibur and Kerl ram. Then it comes all the way down as Misakin the Pigam. So now we see what's the pshat of Amin Yeshmei Rabba. That we want to bring down from Shmei Rabba, Sevid Kololmin, Mail Mishtalshlus. We want to bring it down into Koyach Adnai. How is that done? You need two things. You need the Kavana, you need the Koil. Kavana reaches higher than your Ishtalshalus, and your Koil reaches into your Ishtalshalus. So Lamaila from your Ishtalshalus comes down to your level of Ishtalshalus, into the Shayrish of your Ishtalshalus, and from there it comes even lower because you're using Koil, you're using Dibur. This is, as the Rebbe said in the beginning of Perek Ches, that everything that happens Lamaila depends on Avodah Sa'adam. We trigger it Lamaila. How? By our Avodah Lamata. Now comes a very, very big question. How is it possible that a Yid should be able to trigger such a high level? You know what that means? You're reaching into Lamaila Miseider Ishtalshalus. It's even higher than Sheiresh HaNivraim. How is it possible to reach to a level which is higher than Sheiresh HaNivraim? All the way Lamaila Seider Ishtalshalus. How is it possible? And that is the answer is it's Takanat Chaim on our own. We have an Eibishter. And that's why the pasuk says, Kasha dibarta. What's dibarta? The Eibishter said so. He gave koyach that we should be able to do it. When did Hashem say that? Let's look in Perek Tes and see how the Rebbe explains it. V'hine yedua sh'avodas ha'adam magas ad sheresh hanivraim b'chinas ishtalshlus. Avodas ha'adam by himself can only reach into a level which is Sheiresh HaNivraim. Can't reach Lamaila. Only B'chinas Ishtalshlus. V'zeh she'al yedei ha'avoda nimshach gam milmaila mi'ishtalshlus. How is it possible that we also can bring down from higher than Ishtalshlus? That's a chidush. A chidush which was accomplished by Matan Torah. By Nesinas Koyach Milmaila, Shenimshach b'Matan Torah. By Matan Torah, till Matan Torah, the Avos did great mitzvahs, and people did great things. They were learning Torah. but they only reached Sheresh HaNivraim. Everything was Madud Umugbal. Everything was limited. They couldn't reach higher. It was a Mechitza. El Yoinim Tachtainim. Matan Torah Hatuv Getan had accomplished that Kadosh Baruch Hu made it possible that a human being, a Yid, through his mitzvahs, through his Ma'aseh HaTachtainim, is able to break through that mechitza. The Eibishter took away that mechitza. El Yoinim should come to Tachtainim, Tachtainim Yalu L'mayla. And that's why the pasuk said that the Medrash says, Ani Amaschil, the Eibishter said, I'll be the first one. Vayered Hashem al Sinai. That's El Yoinim Yedel Tachtainim. Val Moshe Amar Alei El Hoelikim. To Moshe said, come up. That was a chibur of El Yoinim and Tachtainim. That was accomplished by Matan Torah. That a Yid should be able to accomplish that. To be able to, if I go to higher than my Yishtalshalos, I'm able to accomplish Gili Ur, the Mailam, and say the Yishtalshalos. Wow. It says, yes. V'zeu kasha dibarta leimer. This is the pshat of the pasuk when it says kasha dibarta leimer. The whole thing is because dibarta. Du hast gesagt. You gave a koyach to a yid. The zeh shal yidei avodas ha'adam leimer. That through avodas ha'adam, which is the leimer, like we learned earlier. What's leimer? The Eibishter said to Moshe Rabbeinu, we learned there are three pshatim in kasha dibarta. And it's important to review them right now, because here that the Rebbe is connecting all three pirushim. In the beginning of the Maimer, the Rebbe wrote three pirushim in kasher dibarta, and he said they must be all connected somehow. Yes. The first hajj of kasher dibarta without Rashi, kasher dibarta, yes, Hashem, you have spoken. What? We thought without Rashi it means the beginning of the pasuk. V'ata Yigdal la koyachatnai. There should be a Yigdal of koyachatnai. Kasher dibarta, like you said, the Eibishter. That's one pshat. Then comes Rashi, says kasher dibarta is what says later in the pasuk. Hashem ke'el erech hapayim. You've given me the sarachmin. What does that mean? The Moshe Rabbeinu is saying to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, kasher dibarta, you'd give us rachmim. And they're connected. Moshe is asking, Yigdal no koyach adnai, please give us a Havdalah of koyach adnai. How? Through the Yud Gimel Tzarachmim. So it's not three individual, independent pirushim. They're really connected. So if we're seeing right now the two pirushim, whether it goes on Yigdal Konoach Adnai or Kasher Dibarta goes on Hashem Erech Hapayim, we see how they're connected. Why? How can you have Yigdal Konoach Adnai through Yud Gimel Mitzrachim? That's Hashem Erech Hapayim. And then there's the third pirush, Leimer. What's Leimer? The Eibishter said to Moshe, Du hast gedacht sagen, Hoye l'chola azreini. We learned this in the Gemara, in Shabbos, that he said to Moshe, you should have said to me something. You should have said, Titzlach malchtecha. You should have hatzlacha. What do those words mean? Because hatzlacha comes from keser. L'mayla m'seder ishtalshalos. That's why it says, Yogaita u'matzasa. If you work hard, you put in the effort, matzasa will be a metzia. It's a hatzlacha. Hatzlacha is not up to say the shtalshus. Hatzlacha means more than expected. Moshe was supposed to say tislach ma'achtecha. That means to be megal at such a oir. But who's supposed to say it? Moshe, avodas ha'adam. That's the lamer, the third pshat. Lamer, it's your work. Moshe's work Moshe's avodah, which represents also our avodah, can cause it. Let's look inside. That brings us Gdolas Kechatne. Shahagdala he al yedei hamshachas hasovev shalamayla meishtalshalus. How can we accomplish that there should be a hagdala of bringing down sovev, which is lamayla meishtalshalus, who dibarta sinas koyach. The kasher dibarta koy gam aleimer kenal b'tchilas ham kasher dibarta that it's referring to leimer, which is talking about you should speak up. This said to Moshe, Haylachalaz Reini, Nitna Koyach LeMoshe, Vayidei, Valyodai Lekolachad Ve'echad, Israel, and through him, that every single Yid shall Yod, Hayidei Avidasai, Yuchalifel, Hagdolas, Koyach Hatnai. If it was just for Moshe himself, if Hashem wouldn't be the Dibarta, forget about it. It's impossible. Because when you look at the pasuk, the whole thing, Moshe is begging, Hashem and we're talking about Leimer. Where does the Barta come in here? Why is it necessary to emphasize Hashem's part in here? Because that's the Iker. Without the Koyach of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, we would never be able to have the Koyach to be Mamshech from higher than say the Shtalshalos. What Moshe wanted to accomplish was only because Kasha Dibarta. And this Koyach, where did we get it from? We got it from Matan Torah. That's what the Rebbe is continuing. Al Piamu V'Leil Shekayach Zeh. It's brought earlier that this Koyach Shal Yidei Avodah Yumshech Gam Ha'er this Kayach, we're on page 88. This Kayach, that through our Avodah should be able to be Mamshech Ta'er, which is higher than Ishtal Shaluz. When was that Nimshech? The Matan Torah. Now we find something similar to that in Matan Torah. We find something similar. There's another Leimer, and there's another Dibur of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which is parallel to these psukim here, Kasha Dibarta, Dibur, and Leimer. Where do we see it? Everyone knows. By David Elikim, it's called Advar Ma'ela Leimer. So you have both things, Vayedaber, the Dibur, like in the pasuk Kasha Dibarta, and what Leimer? You have both things there. Let's look inside. Shegam yesh loymar b'kasha dibarta leimer. When it's Moshe Rabbeinu saying Hakadosh Baruch Hu, kasha dibarta leimer koi gam, it's also referring to al the pasuk vayedaber alikim es kol advarim ha'ela gaimer leimer. What does that mean? Shenema b'matan Torah, shegama pirush the vayedaber goyim leimer. Who the pirush over there too? That what's leimer? Leimer means to repeat. Every yid when he learns Torah, Hashem is saying it with him. A yid can be guided that HaKadosh Baruch Hu should learn with him. That's the Leimer. Vayedaber elikim es kol advarim ha'ela is the Nesinas Koyach. For what? Leimer. A yid shall learn Torah. Hu shavayedaber elikim haya sheYisrael yoimru es kol advarim ha'ela. Shekoy al kol gam al kol ha'Torah kula. That is the Vayedaber is that Yidden should say all of the things of Torah, including the entire Torah, by from the Lamer. What's Lamer? Lamer adavarim shakadosh baruch hu aimer. To say the same words that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is saying, like it says, Kol HaKoyre v'shayna, HaKadosh Baruch Hu koyre v'shayna kenegdan. That when you learn Torah, they was just saying it with you. Like the Gemara says, Ka'ayne achad HaKoyre, as if Hashem is reading it and you're repeating it. That's what Lamer means. When it says, Vaydaber Hashem al Moshe Lamer, Hashem is telling Moshe, Lamer to say it over. Vaydaber Elikim is called Advarim Ha'ela, Lamer. I want you to repeat. It's an Esinas Kayach for all the parts of the Torah. Hainu, Sha'yidei Sha'adam Oimer, through the person saying Divrei Torah, who guide him, Sha'kadosh Baruch Hu Yoima Diburim Elu. That's causing that HaKadosh Baruch Hu should say the very same words that he is saying. That is what's accomplished when you learn Torah. What does it mean, the same words HaKadosh Baruch Hu is saying? What's the pshat? The same words? Yes, I can be guided that the Kadosh Baruch Hu's Torah is here already before I woke up, before I was born. What does this mean? That the Eibusher should say these words? The Rebbe explains, Hamshachas Oir Ein Sof Shalamayla Mishtal Shalus. That's a Kadosh Baruch Hu. Bit Torah into Ishtal Shalus. By Yidei Nimshach HaKoyach Gam B'chlolos Havedas HaAdam. This brings about a koyach also in Avedas HaAdam. Sha'yidei Avedasai. Ba'oifin Shalamayla Shahalamayla Mishtalshul Shabadam Me'er B'ishtalshul Shabai. This is guiding that a person should be able to bring down from his Lamayla Mishtalshulus into his Ishtalshulus. Which, by the way, just to clarify something important here. Yes, we are comparing the Kasha Dibarta of Ata Yigdal to the Vayedaber and Lamer of Matan Torah. There is a similarity. Kasha Dibarta, Lamer, Vayedaber, Elikim, Lamer. Yes, but they're totally different, really. What's the difference between them? By Matan Torah, by Yedaber Elikim is called. You're talking about a hamshacha of Lamayla Mishtalshus to where? Into Torah, into Ishtalshus. Bit Torah. Look in what we just learned. Lamayla Mishtalshus. Bit Torah into Ishtalshus. But when you're talking about Ata Yigdal, no Koyach Adnai, we're talking about a level which has to come down to Chet, Ve'ovein, or Pesha, to sin, to fill up a begam. That's a much lower level. Yes, it's similar by the fact that we're bringing a great Gilead, but where's it coming down to? A place to fix up a damage. So both places, it's a Gilead Momaila Lamata. The only thing by Torah, it stays in the level of Torah. And by Ata Yigdal, it's talking about cleaning up the mess of the Chet HaMeraglim. By Yidei Nase. One second. Sha'yidei Avidose ba'ofen shalamayla. Yid does his avodah in a way that the lamayla mishtalshalus sheba'adam may be shtalshalus sheba'y. Do things lamayla mitamadas. That what's lamayla mishtalshalus should be made in its shtalshalus. What is accomplished? The Eibusher gave us a koyach. You're pushing a button. How's it done? It's the Eibusher's koyach. We can't do it on our own. It's a chidush of Matan Torah. The Eibusher's koyach. We do this. It pushes the button. Mamshech oir shalamayla mishtalshalus b'ishtalshalus. Hamshacha seviv b'memali. Can you imagine? You take a 3-year-old kid and say, press this button. And boom, what accomplishes. And why? Because the button was created by Hashem. When we serve Hashem in a way, not only b'medida v'hakbala, that only what I understand and only what Me'etz Tov agrees to, where we go l'mayla misedish talshus, even if Me'etz Tov, v'yidei nasa hamshachas haseviv gam lamata ba'olam. Also down here ba'olam, it brings down seviv, shamshachas haseviv ba'olam, higam ba'pnimius shabayit. Seviv is always here. That's it's called seviv kolonim. We want it to come down in a pnimius and bring a oil. V'yidei shlemes hakavana dedira loy yizbarech b'tachtenim. To bring the dira b'tachtenim. Can you put up the chart, please? I want to sum it up quickly. I see it's getting late. So we have, it would be such a good idea for Chazara to print out the chart. Everyone should print it out for themselves. So we learned, we're going to do the last three columns, B'kitzur. Amin yesh me'raba, according to Rashi, B'chol koyach chavanasei, Rusa the Liba, that's Seviv Kolomen, higher than the Shtalshus of the person. That is parallel to the L'maylam Shtalshus of Eilam. Hashem Erechapayim, Yidgim L'srachmim. And that is the koyach that we get from David Elikim. Then comes, what does Tosfos say? B'Kerl Ram. Why? Because you're the Koil Ram is the pshat, you're using Dibur. Because you also have to bring it to the Makayim of the Pigam. And that's accomplished through Koil Ram. So you need both. You need the Oyer, and you have to bring the Oyer down. And that's parallel to Yigdal not Koyach Adnai, Ishtalshlus coming down into Adnai, and Avodah Sodom, that's Leimer, Avodah Sodom. This is a powerful maimed. It gives us such an insight of what's accomplished. It says in the Gemara that a person who learns and does not review is like a person who planted a tree and never goes back to take the fruits. So for sure, we have to do Chazara, everyone on their own, of course, because Bez Hashem next week, we will continue another Maimer. Seid alle gesund. And tonight is Chof Gimel Sivan. Don't forget, Chof Gimel Sivan, it says in Megillah Esther, it's when Mordechai HaTzadik was controlling the world. A Yid is able to control the world. He wrote letters then that should be Kiritzain Mordechai. So we have a time we can get rid of all gazetas. Ikris gazeta of the Galus, and to bring the Geula Amitis Vashlema with